I started working out just like 2 or 3 years ago. You hear conflicting reports saying one says that muscles don't grow as you get older, some say they do. So I'm just trying to figure out how muscle growth.
Well, it's an interesting question. So the question is once you get, like this gentleman's 50, I'm 47, can you train and grow? Well, first of all, you're laid into it.
Yeah.
So they can absolutely grow. Now, if you're a guy like me, let's say you've been training 30-some years, are you going to magically put on a lot of muscle when you're 50? Probably not. But you're in a great situation. Like, you're just getting started. So, you know, the only caveat I'd say is a lot of times when we get older, our hormone levels drop.
Right.
When that happens, now you're going to have a hard time gaining muscle. If you don't have the right hormonal levels, it doesn't matter what age you are. If you're 20, if you're 30, if you're 50, it's going to be hard to put on muscle. It's one of those challenging things I find as a coach, actually. When I work with somebody that's kind of their hormones are tanked, it doesn't matter how good their training is or diet is, they just look the same. It's nothing they're doing wrong, it's just their hormones aren't optimized. So as long as you have all those levels where they should be, I feel very confident saying you should be able to put on a good amount of muscle. You know? If you said, John, I've been training for 35 years, I'd say you're probably not going to grow much. I love that question. So the question is there, you're on a budget, what is you consider like essential for gaining muscle? So first of all, I grew up, my grandmother raised me, she was a cook in a restaurant. I know what it's like to not have a lot of money, all right? So I've been there. And I was crazy enough about supplements that when I worked my jobs, when I wasn't in sports, I spent all my money on supplements because I was like the magazines, that's where I got my inspiration, was from the magazines, and there was advertisements. So, when Muscle Tech came out with all those ads on Muscle Mag, I was like, this is the secret here. I just need the creatine and I'm going to be huge, right? And I took supplements back in the days where you didn't care how they tasted. We chewed up desiccated beef liver tablets. We didn't care. It's like, if this works, I don't care. I don't care what it tastes like. I'm going to take it. It's a different world now. Would any of you guys take a supplement out that tastes like crap? One guy. See, that's you guys. So that's rare. It's so rare. Now it's like you got to have the flavor profile like that. But like in terms of supplements, it depends on how hard you're training. Most of the needs you have can be covered by food, but let's be honest here. How many of us have an awesome diet, eat everything we need to every day in the right varieties? It's just hard. That's where things like protein powders come in handy. I've taken protein powder my whole life. I've been fortunate, like the last probably 15, 20 years, I've been able to get free supplements. So I've also taken a lot of supplements where I just thought, wow, what a waste of money that was. Luckily, I didn't spend it. But even when I did have money, I was wasting it. But there are some things that I really believe in. My number one core belief is actually, we could probably argue, a lot of people argue with me about it, is the intra-workout stuff. I'm a massive believer in intra-workout nutrition. Intra meaning what you consume while you're training. It's only for people who train really hard. If you don't train really hard, you're wasting your money. But the reason why it's so valuable is it has a profound impact on recovery. So if I can get somebody that I can train them really hard and they can recover, now they're in a good position to reach their genetic potential. Now the next question is, what's a good intra-workout? Is it waxy maize and a little bit of leucine? It might help you this much, but I want something that helps you this much, right? So I'm a big believer in essential amino acids. So you get the BCAAs plus you get the other essentials. You get the histidine, the phenylalanine, all that stuff, so that you can actually, it actually gives you can actually grow more muscle tissue. There's a lot of people will say, well, all you have to do is stimulate protein synthesis. That's a very narrow-minded way of looking at it. Not only do you have to stimulate protein synthesis, you have to stimulate it to a high degree and you have to maintain it. So it's the magnitude and the duration. And a lot of things like leucine, it'll turn the car on, but it doesn't put the car in gear and take you anywhere. It's a good thing to get you started, so it is important, but all the other essential aminos also really, they give you the ability to actually gain muscle, because you need all essential aminos to gain muscle. Now, I'm a big believer in cluster dextrin for the carbohydrate. So cluster dextrin has this really cool, unique molecular structure where it just kind of breaks off and it's nice and steady. some carbohydrates you have will create this massive rise in blood sugar, and then what happens? Your kidneys pump out a bunch of insulin, then your blood sugar crashes. So you feel great, and the next thing you know, 15 minutes later, you feel terrible, your blood sugar might be low. I'm a big believer in stimulating blood sugar like at a steady level, so your insulin levels are steady, and that can give you the energy, the stamina to last through your whole workout. Plus, it gives you great pumps because all the glucose coming in. So that's like when I formulated recovery, that was like the top two things in addition to the electrolytes was essential amino acids and cholesterol. Like those two. And it's funny when you do it, you don't get sore anymore, and then you start wondering, like, am I not training hard enough? I started doing that in 2010. And I tell the story, actually it was 2011, I tell the story all the time. So I was working with a company, Biotest, back then. I was writing articles for them, and I was talking to the owner of the company, and I honestly, I hadn't gotten any better. For years, for the last 3 or 4 years prior to that at least, my competition weight, my muscle was the exact same. It didn't matter how much I ate. Trust me, I could eat food back then. I don't eat much now, but back then I would eat. So we looked at the factors. It's like, okay, what can I do to get better? Can I train harder? I was training really, really hard. Like that's back when I was training with Dave Tate every weekend. I don't know if you guys know Dave or not. He's one of my best friends. And we were murdering each other. We were killing each other. So the answer is probably not to train harder. Okay, are you just shy on calories? Absolutely not. You know, that's when I was shoved. I call it the power shove technique. You just eat from the time you get up till the time you go to bed. There's no shortage of calories. So the only thing I figured that would be different is if we somehow changed my ability to train more frequently. So if you're going to train more frequently, you have to recover. And this was back when we would train our legs on Saturday and they'd be sore till Thursday. So on Friday, you're like, okay, I think I'm going to be good for tomorrow. I mean, we'd sore for a long time. Anybody ever get that sore? Yeah, man, especially in your legs, right? So we started working on these combinations. Back then it was casein hydrolysate and cholesterol. Soreness went away. I was like, this is like freaky. So I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Like I'm not getting sore. And we're like, no, that's the recovery. So that's kind of how that story started for me, and that's why I'm such a big believer in it. And then I started implementing that in people's programs along the way. It was the same story. I've got hundreds of emails where people go, hey John, man, I'm not getting sore anymore. I'm like, it's working. Now we can train more frequently. It's been I don't like to use the cliched words like game changers, but that's something that makes a huge difference. So that's like if you could only give me one supplement, that's what I'm going to take. I don't like being sore personally, probably because then I can't run around with my kids. I like to be able to run around with my kids. So a good recovery, and it's interesting because there is research now. Some people choose to ignore it and just focus on other research, but there is research that shows combining essential amino acids and carbohydrates control muscle protein breakdown. So you have this scale, you have muscle protein synthesis and then you have muscle protein breakdown. And when you train, you're just breaking down muscle. So where you want to be at is you want to have more synthesis than breakdown. That's how you're positive and you can actually grow muscle. But when you train like a maniac, you have all this breakdown to deal with. So if there's a way to manage the breakdown, now you can change that relationship much easier. So what happens is when you manage muscle protein breakdown, you're in a more favorable position. And if you want to get technical with it, what happens is you can measure this. There's a measure of muscle protein breakdown called 3-methylhistidine, and you can measure it in your urine. So, when they do these tests and they use essential aminos and carbohydrates, they can actually see the 3-methylhistidine levels like going down. Whereas the people who aren't taking that, like the placebo groups, their muscle protein breakdown's through the roof. So there is a lot of positive things happening when you combine aminos and carbs when you train. You just got to have carbs that don't upset your stomach. That's another reason why I like cholesterol. Is a lot of people, they don't feel real good in their stomach. So that would be my answer. Honest to God, it's the intra-workout stuff. But again, I want to say it's for people who are training like really, really hard. If you're not training to create that muscle protein breakdown, then and then you got cool stuff like curcumin's great for your joints. Vitamin D3 is great for all us pale white people. You got stuff like that. Fish oils, I'm a big believer in. You got all those things that are awesome too. So, great question. Yes, sir.
Pre-workout meal.
Pre-workout meal.
What's the
Yes.
best? say, wow, like when you're dieting or someone who's supplementing with insulin pre-workout?
So pre-workout meals. So I want to start that insulin response, but I don't want to like create this massive spike. So the first thing I want to do, tell people, is going to probably shock them, is they have to have some fat in that meal. They're like, oh my God, I'm combining fats and carbs. I'm going to get fat from that. Like, no, you're not. You're going to get fat from eating too many calories through the day. So I like to have a little bit of fat. For a guy, it's usually like 10 grams. That's like a tablespoon of peanut butter. For a woman, probably half that. The reason why I advise that is because it slows down how quickly glucose can actually get into your bloodstream. So if you're managing how quickly glucose can go in your bloodstream, you're managing your insulin response, right? So now you got a nice steady level of insulin. Now, do you need a ton of carbs? I don't think so. I think, 30, 35 grams of carbs for a guy is plenty. Again, the goal is to get all that started, and then we continue it with the intra-workout drink while we're training. Protein, I like something that digests real easy. And then in terms of when you eat it, it depends on the composition of the meal. Like if I would eat, say, a big steak, I'm probably going to do that an hour and a half, 2 hours before I train. I would not eat that 30 minutes before I train. But if it's just like maybe a scoop of protein powder for my protein, yeah, I might have that half hour before I train. So depending on how quickly the food digests is where I would time it